Alright everybody, today we are talking about Gary Vaynerchuck. So one of the biggest things I've learned from Gary, you need to listen to the kids. So kids are always kind of at the forefront of the next trend. And one story I'm always reminded of is something that I saw from Gary probably 4 years ago or so. It was this short video he put out, and he was talking about how he thought TikTok was just going to explode and be everywhere and infiltrate every other platform there was. And, not that I didn't believe him, but I didn't really understand the extent to which he was really believing that TikTok would be pervasive. And it turned out, today you go onto YouTube and you see TikTok videos. You see as many TikTok videos on the home screen as you do YouTube videos. You go onto Instagram, you see watermarked TikTok videos. You see TikTok videos everywhere, and it's become this whole kind of subculture. And it also creates this kind of symbiotic relationship. When all of these TikTok videos are on YouTube, for instance, it kind of elevates YouTube because it incorporates this other platform. And when you go onto TikTok, it funnels things to YouTube, and when you go onto YouTube, it funnels things to TikTok. It creates this kind of symbiotic relationship between different platforms. And that's one thing that, kids trends do. They explode really quickly, and they kind of integrate different platforms that are already in existence. So listen to the kids. That's the first thing I've learned from Gary. One other point about listening to the kids is that at some point you kind of have to accept that you're not a kid anymore. Everyone likes to think that they're young, they're hip, they're kind of with it, they're, hip to all the newest trends and ideas. But at some point you have to kind of humble yourself, realize that you aren't a kid anymore. Maybe some of you are, I'm certainly not. And you need to realize that you need to look around you, look outside of yourself, look to the younger generations to see what's really trending, what's going to blow up, what's going to be really big next. So the next thing I learned from Gary is that a 30-year-old millionaire is not a realistic standard, a realistic goal to try to achieve. And that's not to say that you can't be a millionaire by the age of 30 or much earlier than that. There are plenty of examples of people who are. A lot of people who I talk about on this channel are. But the thing is, I think it's really a mindset thing. When Gary says this, what he really means is you shouldn't be looking at things when you're young, when you're a teenager, when you're in your younger 20s. You shouldn't be looking at things in periods of a few years or even 10 years. You need to look at things in periods of at least 10 years and longer. You really need to have this kind of extended, zoomed out view of what your goals are. And, one thing you always hear is that people tend to underestimate what they can accomplish in a long period of time, but overestimate what they can accomplish in a short period of time. So we really want to extend the range of time that we're looking at and look farther down the road. So even if you want to accomplish something big by the age of 30, that's great, but look farther down the road, set your sights there, and you'll probably achieve what you want to achieve even sooner than you think you might. So the third thing I've learned from Gary is that you really need to love what you do. To be able to put out enough content or enough quality goods or services or whatever it is you're trying to sell or push, you really need to be able to find a passion for it in order to create enough volume for it to be worthwhile in the end. Gary always talks about pushing hard and hustling, but even he recognizes that you need to sleep and you need to make sure you don't get burnt out. And one of the fastest ways to get burnt out is to force yourself to do something that you don't want to do just for a return. So another really important part about this is having a growth mindset and always trying to learn more about your craft. You're never going to stay on the forefront in whatever field you're in if you aren't continually getting better. And you really need to have a passion for whatever it is you're doing if you are going to continue to grow and want to continually learn about whatever it is you're doing. So this kind of leads into the first question I have for Gary, which is, do you have any apprehensions about the hustle culture? Gary, more than anyone else, probably talks about this hustle culture. One thing I've always thought is that this hustle culture can be really kind of damaging, especially to younger people. They get really, really burnt out. Burnout's something we've already discussed here, but it's really a dangerous thing, especially for younger people who maybe don't have all of their priorities in a line yet. Burnout's something I think about a lot. It's something I've experienced. and it's something that as you grow, you learn how to manage and recover from better. But it's definitely something that's dangerous for young people. So the second thing I would ask Gary is, what is the next big thing that nobody knows about? Um, Maybe is kind of a silly one, but Gary always has news about the next big thing, and a lot of people don't believe him, but he almost always ends up being right in following new trends, new subcultures, new companies that are coming out. So that's what I would ask Gary, try to get into his head a little bit about that. The third thing I would ask Gary is, what is your proudest instance of graduating an employee? So this is a really, really cool concept that I've learned from Gary. The notion that if someone works for you and ends up leaving for a different opportunity, you should think about that as them graduating and not them quitting, because the skills, knowledge, and experiences that they gleaned from the experience of working with you, they're going to carry into that next role. And they only got that next role under most circumstances in part because they worked with you. So one thing that I really love about Gary is that he kind of thinks about the journey all the time, whether it's for his own businesses or his employees. So I'd really like to know from Gary what one instance was where he was just really glad to see one of his employees move on from his company, one of his companies, to something else, to a different opportunity, and maybe, information about what that person has achieved since then. So that's it, guys. Thanks very much. I've learned a lot from Gary. I think you can too. Hopefully you've learned a couple things here, and I'll see you again soon.